Good morning, my name is Russell with the Piano Outlet, and today I'd like to show you a comparison between the Yamaha G1 or C1 and the Yamaha GC1. And actually I'm making this recording for Kay and Jim specifically because they're interested in actually both of these pianos, trying to make an informed decision on which one that they want. Let me talk a little bit about the G1 first, because there's a lot of confusion with respect to the G1 and its type of model that it is. Quite often you'll hear salesmen at brand new Yamaha places talking bad about the G series because it's supposedly a lower series than the C series. That's not entirely true, because in 1993 the G1 and G2 were simply renamed C1 and C2. They're actually identical pianos except for the lid being beveled in that year. And prior to that, what happened is that the G1 and G2 were redesigned from the 80s type of G1 and G2 in around 1991 to the current style, which can be easily identified by the hexagon bolts inside the piano, as you see here. So when you see a G1 or a G2 that does not have these bolts, it just has regular screws, it's the previous designed G1 or G2, which is just an older version. But this particular model G1, when it was redesigned in 1991, they kept the same design to this day. All they did was rename it in 1994 about C1 and C2. So basically what you're looking at here, although this is a Yamaha G1, this is an identical piano to a C1 except for the beveled lid. Now, one thing about the C1 and the G1 is that they all share the same properties as Yamaha's conservatory series with regard to certain details in the cabinet, but they are not conservatory pianos. Conservatory piano would have to be a piano anywhere from 6 foot and up, because that would be considered a grand piano. You would never have a baby grand piano used in a conservatory. So C1 does not mean conservatory model, and C2 does not mean conservatory model. Actually, what it may mean is classic series, because the previous name G1 and G2, when you look at the Yamaha's brochure, they called it the classic series. So it's kind of confusing, and I hope that clears it up a little bit. But let's talk about some of the features that you find in the Yamaha G1 and made after 1992. If you look over here, you'll see a locking mechanism, and if you look over to the Yamaha GC1, there is no lock. And then, because it has a lock on the lid here, the lock bar has the other part of the lock here, which has the key, and you see that is on the later model G1 and C1, but it's not on the GC1. See, what they did with the GC1 is they took a C1. This is about I'm trying to think of the year, 2003, 2004 GC1 mahogany. This is identical to a C1, except they deleted some features that you find in the higher end C1 and G1s. Okay, and that is, again, the lock. If you notice, the wood over here is a lot thinner than it is on the G1, and that's why there's no lock here. And the lock bar, which is this piece of wood here, really the only reason for this piece of wood is actually to house the key lock, but you see it's deleted in this piano in order to save cost. Now, that has nothing to do with the sound of the piano. The sound of the piano is going to be exactly what you would expect from a C1. It is not an inferior instrument. It just has some things that were deleted from the cabinet in order to save money. One of the other things that are very noticeable right away are going to be the legs. If you notice, the leg style on this piano is tapered down to a gold collar right before the caster, where this is a spade leg. And this detail over here is what we call a spade leg. And one thing that you have to realize before these pianos go out, the casters come off and get polished, so don't worry about that. Now, the other thing that I want to show you is the action. If you notice, the action on this piano, this is pretty much a brand new action in this piano. And I want you to see the hammers, okay? Hammers are very full and nice, but notice the hammers are all all completely white felt on the GC1. Also, when you look at the key bed, which is this piece here, underneath the keys, I'm going to set this down here. This certain type of wood is one sheet, probably a certain type of plywood that they use. And notice the holes here. These are where the pedals bolt into. Okay? On the G1, I'm going to pull this action out. Incidentally, both identical actions. Okay? One of the things I wanted to show you, we have better quality hammer in this G1. You see there's a harder felt underneath the white felt. This would be considered a more expensive hammer. You see it has three different types of felt. It has this gray felt here, which supports the white felt. It's a lot stiffer. And very hard felt in here, this green. So there's three types of felt in each one of the hammers in the G1 and the C1. However, the GC1 is a less expensive type of hammer, where it's just solid white felt. Getting back to some of the other physical characteristics, the key bed on this piano, it is actually of a higher quality because you can see that it's all solid wood here, solid planks that are set in here, and you have this piece going across here, whereas the GC1 is just one sheet, basically of plywood going across. Underneath the piano, G1 has a steel beam going across underneath the key bed, and this steel beam is what the pedals bolt to. And you see under here also the key bed is solid wood. Inside the GC1, the pedals bolt directly to the key bed, okay? And I could just tell right away just by looking at the bottom of this piano, it is an inferior type of wood that they use in the key bed versus the G1 or the C1. So that's one thing that you also need to consider. So, having said that, both pianos basically identical, except the G1 made from 1992 today. It's going to be better made piano, better quality cabinetry, but from the instrument standpoint, they're both going to sound very similar. So, I'm going to just do a quick comparison and play both. Real quick, nothing too major. If I make the video too long, then it takes a lot longer for it to upload. Unfortunately, we're going to wait to do a video on the comparison of the sound because the piano right now is pretty out of tune. So the next video that I will make will be, I'll play them both for you once we get this piano tuned today. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.